Good morning, and thanks for joining us for today's luncheon conversation. It's part of our Aging at Altitude series. Today's topic is hearing health technology, not your grandmother's hearing aids. My name is Al Manzi. I'm president and CEO for Prairie Mountain Media and also publisher for the Camera and for the Times Call. Today, we're very fortunate to hear from Samantha Warren. She's clinical director of audiology for Boulder Valley Hearing Associates. After today's presentation, I will host a question and answer session. So please feel free to insert your questions anytime during the session into the Q&A or chat function on your device. Also a reminder to please visit our Aging at Altitude website and support our partners. So please welcome Samantha Warren.
Hi, thanks, Al. So as Al stated, my name is Samantha and I'm with Boulder Valley Hearing Associates, also part of Boulder Valley Ear, Nose, and Throat. So chances are if anybody has had their tonsils or any other type of ear, nose, and throat concern, you've probably seen us because our guys have been practicing for forever. So today's topic is about something I'm very excited about, which is just the changes that have happened with technology over the last even 5 years. And so when I discuss with patients who've been diagnosed with a hearing loss, a lot of times the concerns that they share with me, it's really they're not concerns anymore. So the topic of they're not your grandmother's hearing aids is not meant to be offensive, but just more on how far devices have come over the last few years. Even in the last 8 to 10 years that I've been practicing, we've seen phenomenal changes. So most people should know that hearing health is very important, but we will start with just a kind of a summary of why do we even care about fixing hearing. One of my theories as to why insurance still didn't or doesn't cover devices is that hearing just wasn't looked at as an important thing to fix. And now we have all of this information to prove to us that hearing is actually more than a luxury. So we've had many, many studies over the last couple of years. We know that untreated hearing loss is actually linked to higher healthcare costs for everybody. So we know that there's some risk cognitively of it's a topic word for everybody. We all want to stay cognitively sharp for as long as we can. So we know having an untreated hearing loss can increase our risks of dementia or other types of cognitive decline. We know it poses a higher risk for depression. We also know that it's a greater risk for falling for a lot of patients. So we'll actually talk about how some hearing aid technologies are helping to combat that. And then in addition to the falling and just overall lower health guidelines or just lower health in general, we see more hospital stays in patients that have untreated hearing loss when we've accounted for other factors. In addition, we also see a much higher risk of a patient being readmitted. So just in general, if we're just kind of looking from a bird's eye view, obviously we all want to keep our health as good as possible for as long as possible. And hearing is just one of those factors that seems easy enough to kind of help. A little bit more on just cognition. I know a lot of people say, okay, well, how does hearing help with, or how does hearing affect cognition? How is that possible? We know that the way that a hearing impairment actually messes with the brain, if you think of it like having too many programs running on your computer, it just kind of slows things down. So having an untreated hearing loss means that you have an increased cognitive load, which it's like having too much stuff that you're trying to do. We know we see changes in brain structure and actual function. So some of those studies have actually happened, we're really proud, right in our backyard in Boulder, Colorado. They've been internationally presenting on the findings of how the brain actually reorganizes to help to accommodate for the changes in hearing. We see that the visual cortex and the frontal lobe actually kind of picks up some of the slack when you're not hearing. So you're reading lips, you're reading facial cues, and your frontal lobe is helping you to make decisions on, okay, well, it's around dinner time, so they must be talking about where we're going. Um, and then we also know that a negative impact on cognition is just reduced social engagement. So obviously that's going to be an interesting, with the way the last year has been for everybody, it's going to be interesting to see how that has affected everybody. But all of this with the hearing loss and kind of the changes cognitively typically leads to either impaired or slower, or just less than ideal cognitive functioning. And then when we're just talking in general of just cognition or dementia or cognitive decline, they're all kind of, some of them are more specific or more general terms of all the same thing. This graph just talks about the factors, or what can we change that potentially could change our risk of actually developing cognitive decline. The biggest one, and 8% doesn't seem big, but it's the biggest, most modifiable risk factor that we can actually do, is helping hearing, because it does take off that cognitive load. We know that it has a more positive impact on depression and just social isolation, because patients are not unconsciously avoiding different social situations because it's just too much work and it's not fun to hear in. So we know that identifying and actually treating it more in midlife, and I don't remember the last time I checked what average lifespan was in America anymore, but I think a lot of people think, oh, well, hearing loss is this 80-something-year-old person's problem. This is only a white-haired person's problem. It really, really isn't. Notice that says addressed in midlife. Midlife is your 40s, 50s, 60s, or sorry, 40s, 50s. So the vast majority of patients who are seeing an impact from their hearing loss, they don't have white hair. They're in their 40s. They're still working and running around full time. So we've also seen a growing number of studies that are actually exciting, because it's supporting that once we do something about the hearing loss, meaning we fit hearing aids, we help fix the hearing loss, it's actually slowing, possibly reversing, but that those studies are still needing a bigger sample size before we get too excited about that. But we're actually seeing some slowing down of the cognitive decline. So we're seeing patients improving on different mini-cog screenings or on imaging. We're actually seeing some of the things like the reversal of basically where, remember I said earlier that their visual and their frontal lobes might be picking up slack. We've actually started to see some reversals where the listening cortex is now working again, instead of relying on these other structures to do its job. So based on this study, the American Journal, or the Journal of American Geriatric Society, said that providing hearing aids much earlier could actually stem the worldwide rise, just because of the trickle-down effect of having it help with social isolation and physical activity and just everything. So that's very exciting for things to come. There's still more studies that need to be done to prove, but it's very exciting that we're starting to see some progress there. So that is kind of the overview of why does hearing matter health-wise. Now, I wanted to highlight some of the former concerns, or some of the complaints that I get from patients when they come in because they remember a parent or a friend, or maybe they themselves actually have had some of these issues with just devices. So a lot of the old style complaints that we were seeing from patients would be the size or the stigma of actually having a device be seen. Batteries were a common complaint that people didn't like, or they always felt like they saw their family member changing batteries constantly, or that they were always having to mess with them or dropping them, or that they were just this huge inconvenience. Feedback, or the whistling or squealing you get when you're near a device, or if somebody hugs you and you wear hearing aids, things like that. A big one was sound quality. People just reported that things just didn't sound normal, that they just didn't sound like they remember them sounding. They just complained that I think the most common words would be like tinny or just wrong, that they had maybe too much trouble or it just didn't sound natural. Background noise is probably even still a semi-relevant one today, but background noise we see was always a complaint, especially with the older generations of hearing aids, where patients or your family members, if you remember, they would report, I feel like I hear more, but I'm not necessarily hearing better, or I feel like I'm hearing all of this extra noise and I'm not hearing the people that I'm trying to hear at my table. Um, Another big complaint that we would see from a lot of people was the constant adjusting. If you ever went out with somebody who was maybe struggling in background noise, they were fiddling or kind of messing with them. I even had one this week who told me about her dad who he would just take them off, where he would just sit there and be messing and adjusting and then would finally give up and just take them off. And then I guess the oldest or the last complaint that I would hear would be just the reliability, just having to mess with something that they felt was constantly breaking or constantly having issues because of moisture or things like that. So some of these may still exist for some patients, but the vast majority of these are actually all old problems that we don't actually deal with as often anymore. My favorite is the feedback problem. So having patients who've worn hearing aids for 10 or 15 years, having to retrain them that going like this to check your hearing aid to see if it's on might not work with new hearing aids because we fixed feedback in the newest technologies. So that's been kind of the old or the concerns that I have from patients when they're reporting, oof, hearing aids, but that means that I'm going to have all of these problems. I think some of the biggest things that have helped to drive change has been patient feedback. So patients' complaints and what patients have needed from devices is constantly getting relayed back to the manufacturers or to people who are designing and creating these. So it's really helped to drive the focus of where they've put their research and development. Research and development obviously is very ongoing. I think it's probably one of those things where we don't have enough people that wear devices. And so the research and development budget just isn't as shared amongst everybody like it is if you were talking about cell phones or TVs. Because how many TVs does somebody have in their house? How many cell phones does everybody have? But the research and development is still ongoing. It's not like we wait 2-3 years for upgrades. A lot of times devices are having upgraded models every 8 to 15 months. Another cool thing has been some of the advancements in technology and the miniaturization of technology that has actually, between cell phones, headphones, like if you think about your Bluetooth headphones, and hearing aids, those three have kind of been sharing and exchanging information for years now that has actually fueled progress in all of the areas. So that's been very exciting. Some of the same stuff that helped make hearing aids compatible with cell phones helped to fuel different things within your AirPods and things like that. So yeah, as everybody continues to want everything to be better, faster, and smaller, then I think we're still going to continue to see even more miniaturization of things. And lastly, I think what's helped a lot too is just that patients are less concerned about just the physical look of a device or something in their ears, because everybody has something in their ears. I think in the beginning when Apple was creating these devices or was creating their headphones, it was a status thing that you had this thing that stuck out of your ears. They probably could have made them less visible, but everybody sees these white AirPods sticking out of your ears. Everybody sees the neck loop Bluetooth pieces. Everybody has something in their ears to make them hands-free and make it more convenient. So I think that that's really helped with the stigma where people don't really look twice if they see something else in your ear, which has been really nice, and I think has been helping patients with acceptance too. So that was our kind of past tense. In terms of future stuff, I think there's been three kind of main things that have been really exciting when I'm sitting down with a patient to tell them, okay, so yes, that was your laundry list of things that you don't want it to be like your dad's hearing aids. Great, let's talk about what's new. So the style changes, the actual sound quality improvements, and then some of the artificial intelligence or some of the other tech stuff that has happened has actually been really exciting. So with the style changes, these are not what you're looking at in terms of these devices have definitely been updated. So they are having them to compete with like your AirPods. So if you take a look at chargers and at new devices, they're designed to look more sleek, and they're designs, I know I keep referring to Apple, but they're designed to look more like a case you would carry your AirPods in or something like that. The beige banana, the beige banana is what I still have patients on a monthly basis when they are picturing a device. They are literally picturing a device that sets behind the ear about that long, pretty thick, and it's this just kind of off beige color that doesn't really match a lot of skin tones, and they're picturing it with a pretty large kind of ear coupling piece or a pretty large ear mold. So we still have beige bananas. They still exist in a lot of companies, but they're a lot less common. We don't do very many of them anymore because there's so many other options that are a little bit more attractive to a lot of patients. And they've been able to put more and more power, and they've been able to control feedback in these devices by making them even smaller and smaller and smaller. So with the improvements just in sound quality, we can get away from having devices be larger than necessary, which has been really cool. So a lot of people also only imagine that it's something that has to sit behind your ear, and it really isn't. Especially with masks, we've definitely seen an increased interest in not having anything that could be on top of their ears, because anybody who actually wears devices, you know that the mask or the sunglasses or your actual glasses and then the hearing aids, they all get tangled when you try to take your mask off, and it just is an inconvenience. It's less comfortable, and it increases your chances of actually losing them. So a lot of the manufacturers made a push the last couple of years to actually put devices inside of ears. So like the device with the gentleman with the mask, it's actually a rechargeable custom. So similar to how you would work with your AirPods or other types of Bluetooth headsets, they're rechargeable, which is great. And then this is one of the newer models, and I tried not to put specific companies on any of these, but they actually are, they literally look like some type of a Bluetooth headphone piece, but inside of that is actual hearing aid technology. So we have the exact same flexibility. We get all of the perks of a hearing aid. They just basically put the case in something that might be more attractive to people, or they just want it to be different. So that's been actually more exciting, and a lot of patients have been just happier that they don't have to pick between, you know, beige or black. They get to pick rose gold or white, or so that's been a little bit. It's been a little bit more fun. It's been like a trip to the tech store and not feeling so much like a trip to getting a health device. And then another advent of technology that has also been really convenient has been rechargeable batteries. So originally, when rechargeable batteries came out, I was most excited for patients who maybe struggled with vision or independence with dexterity, like they had to have a family member help them change batteries. So I was most excited for them because I thought that this would be the biggest difference for them. It's actually it's actually been something that was more attractive to my on-the-go patients who didn't want to deal with the inconvenience of batteries. So, especially with how streaming and other things have kind of come into our life, it means that they're not going to be in the middle of a meeting and have that little battery cue go out, or they're not going to be out to dinner and have one of their hearing aids die or go out. And nobody wants to sit there at a restaurant and change a battery in front of other people or have their hearing aids go out. So the rechargeability has definitely been a lot more attractive to new patients. I would say it's probably 80 to 90% of what patients are preferring to pursue when you sit down and say, well, do you want to change batteries or do you want to just set it on a charger at night? New patients far and away are preferring rechargeable. And even my existing users say, oh, I can get rid of batteries? All right. They're more like 60, 70% because some people still really like that control of not having to worry about being somewhere without power or having to bring a charger. But the rechargeable batteries have been really handy and helpful for patients and for us. So in terms of style changes, that's been what's been kind of most exciting for us is they've just made them smaller. They've made them more attractive, more fun. We get more fun colors now. We don't have to necessarily choose just between the beige banana or silver or black. So that's what's been more fun for us and more exciting for us to kind of help the patients and say, oh, do you want blue? Do you want teal? Do you want purple? So yeah, sound advancements. So along with everything that's been happening in terms of innovation, like we talked about the miniaturization of technology, the chips have gotten so small within these devices, and they've been able to pack way more stuff within these chips. So the actual technology on board of a hearing aid anymore it's more or equivalent to what was on Apollo 11. So, I mean, everybody has that in their cell phone pockets, but you also now have it within this hearing aid that's this big. We've also seen huge improvements just in sound quality. Remember, people felt like the sound was going to be too tinny or it just wasn't natural and it just didn't sound quite right. With improving the computer chips basically inside of the hearing aids, we've been able to get a much more extended range of those pitches to just have things sound more normal, which has been really nice. And then the noise, remember background noise is also a super common and just a big complaint for a lot of people that they have a hard time focusing on what they're trying to hear over all of the other stuff. So the microphones and the hearing aid noise filters have actually gotten a lot smarter at working together. So for example, if you're driving in a car, they can recognize, okay, so this is road noise. She's the passenger. I'm going to turn this side off and I'm going to focus just on the driver because that's going to make things easier for understanding. Or there's kids in the back seats. I'm going to leave those back microphones on so that we can hear the kids. So they've just gotten a lot smarter at interpreting what's good for sounds. One of the things that's actually been really cool about one of the companies is they actually created, they're calling it a deep neural network. So what they did was they actually recorded 12 million sounds in kind of just different environments, and then trained the hearing aid as to how to change the focus. So for example, if you are walking with somebody and you're trying to converse with them, you obviously want that to be the priority, but you also want to hear if somebody on a skateboard or a bicycle or somebody is coming up behind you or next to you, or you are out to eat and the waitress comes up next to you guys. You don't want to have them have to repeat, or you don't want to be startled, things like that. So that's been really fun to actually kind of see that technology. The reports that we're getting back from patients within that technology has just been that things, they hear more, but they're not having to put more effort into hearing. So they just feel like their bubble or just kind of their environment got bigger, that they feel like one of my patients said they felt like they got the eyes in the back of their head back. They felt like they just had this extra awareness of what was going on around them. So that's been really exciting and cool. And again, only happens because we can get these computer chips so tiny and we can store all this information on them without sacrificing and making hearing aids much larger. So, which would be it would be a no-go for people. Nobody wants them to be a lot bigger. So now a disclaimer for some of my patients who have maybe more severe hearing loss, or maybe they almost have some type of a processing disorder with noise, or almost like a neuropathy type of thing with noise. It does not matter how beautifully that hearing aid is going to eliminate background noise. There's still always going to be a gap between what they need the hearing aid to do and what they are actually capable of doing themselves. So the last couple of years, the hearing aid manufacturers have actually taken note that there is this gap that exists for a lot of patients. I would say it's almost as high as 30 to 40% of patients where they still have a hard time in busy restaurants or in group situations. So they've almost exclusively, or all of them, have created some type of remote microphone technology. So remote microphone technology is really widely used in classrooms. So with kids, they have their hearing aids, and then their teacher actually has a little microphone that's attached to them that can stream directly to that student. Because even with hearing aids in a classroom, the teacher says, okay, I want everybody to take out your math books and turn to page. And by then, everybody's jumbling and moving things around, and that page number gets lost to somebody with a hearing loss who has trouble with background noise. So they have taken that technology that has existed for a long time in schools, and they've actually kind of made it much sleeker and much more attractive for adults. So I've got kind of two pictures or examples of different mechanisms that help different patients. So some of them are really small. They're probably about this big. They're not very thick. They're designed to actually clip onto like one other person's shirt. So it might be to clip onto a spouse. It might be to clip onto a doctor in a doctor's office. Or if you've been to the pharmacy in the last year, they are 6 feet away from you with a giant plexiglass screen and a mask. So it's something to clip onto somebody that you're having a hard time hearing. So that's been really nice. Or like the circular little disc one that's there in that picture. Those guys are actually cool because it's like a little touch screen. So if you're sitting at a group of people at a restaurant table, you can actually touch which directions you want those microphones to listen to. So you can just have them all be on, and it creates like a little bubble around the table. Or if you're trying to have kind of a one-off conversation over here or across the table, you can actually activate one or two of those microphones, which has been really nice. And if anybody has kind of had the wherewithal to think, but that's on a table's loud. These microphones actually have noise canceling technology inside of them. So like if you had the microphone sitting on the table and you crumbled up a piece of paper, or you were clinking glasses or silverware next to it, it actually turns it off. So it doesn't pick up some of that extraneous noise from the table. It's really focusing on speech, which has been really nice. Another kind of cool piece with some of our streaming technology is actually been TV streamers. So TV streamers have been around for a while for devices. And I'll admit that I really didn't see the need for them for a lot of people until I started using them during COVID. And the amount of satisfaction, the amount of improvements that my patients got from using TV streamers, it's just more commonly recommended for me now when I'm discussing different needs of what they might need, because our homes are a lot more open than they used to be. So the acoustics within the household are not the best for watching TV. Also, the speakers on TVs, now that we have these nice flat screens, the speakers are on the back side of the TVs. So you're waiting for that sound to bounce off the wall and come hit you, which is why a lot of times it seems like you're just hearing all this noise and you're not catching the dialogue per se. So what a TV streamer does is that it actually takes it so that the sound coming out of the TV comes right to your hearing aids. And then you don't have to fight through, the dog scratching next to you, or the neighbor's dog barking, or the air conditioner or heater running. You don't have to fight through all of those extra things. And it helps with kind of some of the bad dialogue. It helps with when people are acting and they're mumbling or they're just kind of muttering or talking quieter. It helps to bring that above all the other kind of noise that's within that show or within that movie that makes you feel like you're there, but it takes away all the dialogue. So it really helps to kind of separate things out just so you don't feel like you have to really focus to listen. You can just kind of hear. So a lot of that technology has been really nice for patients. And then the last thing that I think has been kind of the most cool has been some of the artificial technology, or kind of some of the other tech that we're seeing. So that you can have smartphones, that you can have smart watches. Your hearing aids anymore are also very, very smart. So most hearing aids are capable of connecting to iPhones, other cell phones, and just any other Bluetooth capable device, which I think a lot of people are intimidated by, but it's not something that you have to genuinely mess with on a day-to-day basis. It's usually something that we are helping you to set up in the office, and then it just kind of runs. So you don't need to be a technological wizard in order to have smart hearing aids. But the hands-free kind of nature of these devices has been fantastic. So even for patients who a couple years ago said, I don't need that, they've actually really enjoyed some of the streaming capabilities where they stream an audiobook on their walks, or they have found a podcast that they really enjoy that now they can just kind of press play and it just sends it to their hearing aids without having to go find headphones, or without having to turn the volume up over the sink or over cooking or things like that. So that's what's been really nice. And hands-free calling. So like in this picture of this gentleman here on the screen, you can actually, with some of these hearing aids, double tap on them and it wakes up your assistant. So it wakes up your Alexa, or it wakes up your Siri, which I hope doesn't wake up for me. But it helps so that you can say, what time is my next appointment, or what's the high today, or whatever you would typically ask for those types of questions. Or you can say, call so-and-so, and then it automatically calls and connects to you, and you don't have to go find your phone to talk to them. It's already hands-free up here. So it's literally like a Bluetooth headset. Or you are waiting for a phone call, and I don't know if you're like me, but I walk away from my phone constantly. You'll actually get the call alerts in your ear, so that you can, again, just double tap or press a button to answer the call without having to go track down and see where your phone is. So that's what's been really nice for patients, just because they already have something in their ears. So it means they don't have to do any kind of extra stuff. They don't have to fight with putting headphones in over their hearing aids or anything like that. So that's what's been really nice, kind of from that perspective. And then one of the manufacturers has actually pursued more artificial intelligence than I would say a lot of the other companies have kind of focused on. So you have your smart watches, you have your Fitbits and different things like that, they actually put Fitbit smartwatch type technology inside of their hearing aid. So it has, you have a daily step or movements or stand count. So anybody who's familiar with Apple or Fitbits, you get alerts after you've been sitting for so many minutes that you should stand up and move around a little bit. There are health goals basically that you put into these devices, and they help to kind of encourage you to maintain a little bit more movements. One of those health goals is actually interaction. So we know the effect that social isolation and just overall what that can have for somebody's frame of mind or depression or things like that. So it also encourages interaction. So, and that interaction doesn't have to be going out to a restaurant, because obviously that wasn't really possible for us in the last year, depending on where we were. So it's encouraging different pieces like that, because we know that, well, first, I guess that patients are more likely to fall once we've reached certain ages. And that's not a normal type of thing, I guess, that I would say. Falling increases with different age groups, but it's not something that we should just accept and say, well, yep, falling's pretty normal. We know that there are things that can be done to help actually reduce falling, whether that's meeting with doctors or physical therapists, or working on things at home to maybe help make some accommodations at home, or just being careful about what we're doing or where we're walking. But we actually know that 30 minutes of activity has actually helped to reduce falls for patients. So over here on this right-hand side, this kind of shows one of the companies, how they have kind of scores, or they have two different sides where you're trying to close the ring, or you're trying to get a perfect score for brain or body. So the brain one is your interaction one. And then your body one is designed more for movements, steps, or physical exercise, or also tracking like how often you're getting up and moving around. So the idea for them, or kind of the slogan behind them, is more about moving more so that we can fall less, or moving more just to improve overall health and just overall quality of life was a big kind of move for them. I remember listening to a talk by some of the med groups there, or listening to some people talking so January of 2020, talking about how detrimental depression and isolation were for patients. And then COVID happened, and I watched my patients sit in complete isolation for a year. So I thought that this was kind of a cool way to try and combat that. And they didn't even think that COVID would happen. So with the fall detection parts of it, what's actually kind of cool about this was that patients can designate family members to have access to their health goals, or to their health progress, or things like that. So I know there were patients that actually set up fun things for, like, they would compete with their grandkids or their kids or other people who were stuck working remotely, sitting in front of a computer, not interacting with people. So they were actually setting up health goals with their family members to make it more fun. And so this is what it would look like on that top right. It would actually look like this if you were trying to monitor somebody's activity. So making sure, maybe because of COVID, you could not visit your mom and you couldn't get out to see and make sure that she was getting out, she was moving around, she wasn't just sitting inside watching TV or just kind of being super isolated and inactive. You can actually kind of monitor and check in. Or the fall detection, which is really cool. The fall detection is set up similarly, where it has a caregiver or somebody's information, and then it will actually text them. So the same types of technology that control, when your phone is moving, there are accelerometers and gyroscopes actually within the hearing aids that can actually detect a fall. Some would say it's actually more accurate than some of the fall detections we're seeing on like smart watches. The hearing aid itself will not call 911, but it will send a fall alert with a link that'll actually pop up and say, Frank has fallen, this is where he's located. And then what's also cool is that it will send a reverse notification back to the patients. So this particular patient, I know it's blurry, but his name is Frank Falls. And so Frank actually gets a notification inside of his hearing aids that says, Carol has received your notification. So it just is one of those peace of mind things that has really helped some of my patients' family members, or some of my patients who've just felt more independent or just more confident about getting out and kind of doing things or experiencing things. I know some of my patients definitely make sure that these are activated, and they tell a family member before they go on a hike in case something happens where they've fallen. So this type of stuff has been what's been really kind of exciting, that it's just one of those bonus things that you just get it in addition to everything else. All right. That is all that I have for today, Al. So I am ready for some questions, if you're seeing some questions.
Fantastic, Samantha. That was great. Really interesting. New technology advancements. It's really amazing. I've been listening to your presentations and others for years, and this is the most advanced presentation that I've heard about hearing. So I'm sure we're gonna get some great questions. So let's get right into the questions.
Okay.
What kind of long-term effects do people have with hearing loss in just one ear and only wearing one hearing aid? Hearing loss caused from an inner ear infection, I guess, is what Susie's talking about.
Okay. So those are harder because some of those effects are not like your effects with depression or with balance or things like that. Those types of things are not necessarily going to be as relevant. The biggest thing that we'll see with a patient who has a one-sided hearing loss is that basically the hearing weakens on that side. So the processing of the hearing on that side gets a little bit weaker. So it's not the hearing may be stable because maybe it was a sudden, just kind of one-off thing, but their ability to tell the differences between S's and P's and T's and other types of sounds will be really active and strong on the good ear. It'll continue to decline in the bad ear until basically we intervene.
Interesting. With aging, how often should you get your hearing tested?
Yeah, so one of the organizations says that after you're 50, you should have it done every 3 years. If you are in your 40s and your last one was over 10 years ago, so grade school, probably, especially if we're seeing concerns like with difficulty in certain environments or with ringing or tinnitus is a big one. We'll do hearing tests just for a baseline. Baselines are fantastic information to have so that if you're 42 and you're starting to see some troubles, it's nice to be able to compare if you're 55 and then we actually start to see some degradation. But bottom line is after 50, they're recommending every 3 years, and it may be more often depending on your other health kind of concerns.
Thank you. We always get these kind of questions, so maybe we can wrap this into one single question.
Okay.
Can you talk about the costs of the various hearing aid devices that you talked about today? Is there any movement to be covered by insurance? And perhaps even talk about the cost of the fall detection system.
Yeah. So I've actually seen a huge uptick in the last 3 years with insurance companies providing some type of coverage towards them, whether that's $500. Some of it has been the insurance companies have actually taken all of the follow-up visits out, and they've just kind of said that patients can get the device discounted in a couple of initial visits, and then after that you are pay as you go type of an idea. But I've seen a huge increase in just how much insurance has been involved. And I'd like to think that that's because of how much we've seen that hearing loss is more than a luxury. It affects overall health and everything. The cost of hearing aids, I think there's a lot of political and a lot of theories that kind of go into where that comes from. I personally believe it started where we didn't have any coverage because it was hard to prove that it was more than a luxury. But just like now we know dental health is actually really important for overall health. We know hearing health is important, but now things are a little bit slower to kind of get fixed or get through. So hearing aids have a huge range when you're including the professional services with it. And so they can range from like 1,000 to over 4,000 each.
Each for each ear?
Yeah, for each ear.
So 2,000 to 8,000.
Yeah, huge range. And it's not like, so you're not going to get differences in reliability. You're not going to get differences like, oh, well, if you want rechargeable and the fall detection, you have to get these. You have more options available. It's more about how aggressive can the noise filters get? How smart are they at dealing with different situations? They're even your lower level technologies now are far and away better than they were 5 years ago because they've just packed more stuff into it. Good things kind of have trickled downwards. So I think that was all of the pieces that you asked.
Yeah, and the fall detection system or notification system, that software is what would that run? So that's a software that's in the ear. It's actually in the hearing aids, right? That then can be tied into phones.
So it's part of a couple different models of hearing aids. So, and I don't remember off the top of my head how low it can go. So I'll say that you probably can't get them for less than 4,000 for the pair. I don't think it goes into the lowest, most basic forms or basic kind of levels of technology. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know you don't have to get the most premium levels in order to get access to some of those features.
And do doctors' offices or the audiological offices typically do their own financing for people that can't pay 100% upfront? Or is that something they have to do with credit cards or something like that?
Definitely financing options exist. I've been a bigger fan of some of our more local financing options. Like a really popular one around here is 15 months, 0 interest. I've liked those more than like your stereotypical like Care Credit or Wells Fargo or things like that. I've just felt like they've been a little bit nicer to the consumers.
Excellent, thank you. We have one in the chat about tinnitus. Tinnitus, from mild to more severe cases. We hear the television commercials all the time saying, "Oh, well, we can come and see us. We can help you with your tinnitus or get rid of your tinnitus." What is the realities now of tinnitus treatment?
Yeah, so it's a huge range. So it's more than just, well, we can't really do anything for it. Nobody can fix it. And it's more than just, well, everybody can be cured. There's no one cause, so there isn't one solution. So we kind of go to the drawing board with every patient that comes into the office with complaints of tinnitus. So typically, like in my office, we actually work with MDs and audiologists. So we kind of get to collaborate and figure out, is it medicine related? Is it related to a noise exposure incident or an accident or something health or body related? And then we can also take a look at hearing. It's one of the more common side effects of an actual hearing loss. So that's why a lot of offices, you'll see them talk about devices or maskers or things like that, because a lot of times tinnitus is just helped by bringing up some of the noises that you're not hearing anymore. And it just makes it so that you're less aware of it. There's not one cookie cutter approach though. Just like you said, it could be mild to, I don't know, it's there. I wish it wasn't, but it exists, to we've actually had patients literally in the last 3 months who've been suicidal over their tinnitus. So there is a huge range. So for some people, it's as simple as we talk through maybe changing medicines, or maybe we identify blood pressure concerns. For other people, it's much more complex, and we are looking at cognitive behavioral therapy and maybe adding medications or more intensive kind of biofeedback with hearing aids and maskers. So there is a huge range to what can be done, but it's not cookie cutter, which I think sometimes feels frustrating to me sometimes, because there isn't just okay, so if I follow steps 1 through 3, everything will be perfect for everybody. Sometimes it feels like it's a little bit more trial and error and kind of getting more information on what is and what isn't working.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
From Brad Walters, I tried behind the ear aids and decided I'd prefer an ear type, but I had problems with occlusion with those and gave those up as well. Which in the canal aids would be best in dealing with the occlusion issue?
So the occlusion issue would depend on where all of those low frequency pitches happened, and how tiny you want that device, because occlusion can be overcome a lot of times by just making a huge hole in the ear hearing aid. If you're trying to get it the smallest, tiniest little kind of nano James Bond type of bot into your ear, there's not going to be a lot of room for that hole to let the sounds out so that you don't feel so plugged up. One of those pictures, it looks like they looked almost like AirPods. I don't have them on my desk, but we've actually seen some patients who've had the same complaint as you, where we couldn't overcome the occlusion effects. They've actually done really well with kind of something that was outside of their ear. So it's not invisible, but again, they look like AirPods or they look like Bluetooth headphones. So just a different direction, but yeah, it changes almost annually. So for anybody else who's also said, yeah, I tried those last year, I tried those 2 years ago or 5 years ago, which is a lifetime ago in hearing aid technology, there's been a lot of stuff that has changed to make it better.
Excellent. The detrimental effects to our health of exposure to EMFs, I'm not sure what that is, has been documented for years. Are you aware of studies or research that has looked at the link between the health issue and wearing hearing aids?
Yes, so the EMFs that they're talking about, because of how much stuff they're packing into hearing aids, the hearing aids have Bluetooth capabilities. So they're talking about basically exposure to low levels of radiation. The hearing aid manufacturers, because these are FDA regulated devices, they're not in the same class, like they're not as high as a pacemaker, but they are regulated by the FDA, which may or may not bring you comfort depending on where you stand on that, but they are highly regulated. They have to pass so many different tests, and one of those tests is actually the EMF outputs. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know with each release of technology, it's one of those things, because Boulder is such a smart, aware community. It's been a question for a couple of years. So it's one of the first things that we look up when a new generation of technology comes out, is where are they falling on the EMF outputs. So the levels of safety, and then it's something like it is an insanely low number, which may or may not bring comfort to anybody, but they have a number that is safe, and then they are so far below it. I think it's like 1% of that safe percentage number. So you have much more EMF exposure from your cell phone and your microwave and kind of everything else that's going on. But it's definitely, it came up here in Boulder much faster than it came up for my colleagues back in the Midwest. So Boulder is a much smarter community, I think.
Can devices be interchanged with newer devices before the contract expires? And you might answer that obviously from your company's perspective.
Yeah, so I don't know which direction they're coming from at it, but the same way that if you had a cell phone and you needed to do software upgrades, there are software updates that happen within hearing aids. But if we're talking like a 3-year-old cell phone and something new comes out on the actual design, you're not going to get access to the new design. You'll get access to the software update that happened with that, but not within the new design. The return period in the state of Colorado is typically 1 to 2 months. So if there's an upgrade that happens within that 1 to 2 months, it's just like Apple. It's all very, very quiet and very secret. If we have patients who are in devices that an upgrade has come out in the last couple of weeks, we are having them upgrade or exchange out, but not if you've got 2 or 3-year-old devices. They're far past the return for credit period, unless you're pursuing something like a leasing program, which we haven't looked at yet, because the costs for leasing they seemed a little extraordinary to us for how often you got to upgrade your devices. But it's a thing in the future that people are thinking of, with the way that you can lease your cell phones and just get access to the newest cell phone. It's definitely something that models that people or manufacturers and companies are looking at. So maybe someday.
Thank you. Is there one source that compares different brands and models?
Kind of. So my cautionary tale to that would be is that this is not like shopping for a car where you don't get to go on Kelley Blue Book and kind of put in all of your wants and then get to pick that one. I would definitely consult with a professional because we are going to be stuck with your happiness for years. So I don't want you to pick a device because you really liked the one feature of it when you're actually going to be happier with the day-to-day sound quality of something else. The website Hearing Tracker, so TRACKER, so literally Hearing Tracker is one attempt. It's run by an audiologist who allows, it's making, I forget how he actually vets those reviews, but making sure that those reviews are, they're not being spammed or they're not being bought by companies, but it's actually run by an audiologist. And so he posts different information talking about the different types of technology. But again, it's not the same as like getting a cell phone or having your list of kind of demands for different tech like that. They are health devices. So I would never walk into my cardiologist's office and say, I want it to do these 3 things and I don't care about anything else. You'll want somebody else's opinion to kind of help you weigh in on what they're not telling you in the reviews.
Excellent, thank you. Are the hearing aids better at addressing clarity of sound, not necessarily volume? Do you need a special hearing aid to get let's say TV streaming device?
No, that TV streaming is actually standard anymore. So TV streaming, any device fit within the last few years, there's some type of a TV streamer that exists for it. So during COVID, a lot of the manufacturers, what actually shifted my perception of TV streamers was a lot of the manufacturers were providing TV streamers to patients at no charge. So I started working with them way more often. And that's what actually shifted my mindset, was there were patients that I thought they don't need this. And very much everybody, they benefited from having this type of technology. So it's capable in almost anything that's been fit, I'd say in the last 3 to 5 years.
And can the fall protection software be added to existing aids, or do you have to get new aids?
It can't be added to older ones. That fall detection came out 2 years ago. Time has been a little bit weird lately. So I think it was 2 years ago that it started to come out in models. A year ago, it became much more prevalent in more models. So it can't be added, unfortunately, to my knowledge anymore. So I don't know if they'll make an update where it'll be backwards compatible in some type of an upgrade. But I somewhat doubt that would be something that they would pursue. So it's been within the last couple of years.
And so I think Barbara is asking a question about a specific aid, Widex, and she often complains about the clarity.
Okay. Yeah, so every hearing aid can actually be fine-tuned. If you think about your old school boom boxes that had all of the bass, middle, and treble kind of pieces, a lot of times it's adjusting those handles to have better volume in the places where she might need it. Or in some situations, it's not a matter of the clarity of the hearing aid. It's a matter of where the devices are falling short because they can't compete with the background noise as much as she needs them to. So that's where sometimes we introduce some of that remote microphone technology or things like that. But I would definitely say having maybe an updated hearing test and visiting with your provider who fit them to make sure that everything is still meeting your prescription, so to speak.
This is an interesting question. Can you make a pitch for the clinic or your clinic versus going to Costco?
Yeah. So I think that there is so many devices around, so anything is better than nothing. We have seen the health effects of how much we need that. We see Costco patients who cannot get in to see their Costco provider because it's not, the model's just different. Whereas if you called to, if you've called in the last hour and have tried to speak with me, I've got 4 other full-time staff members who probably could have answered your question or helped you or gotten you an appointment. So staffing wise, it's more about service, like it's more immediate help or care. And then what's also been really nice is that I do work in collaboration with MDs. So if I needed help with earwax, if you've ever been to Costco and you have an earwax problem, they have to send you out the door and on because they can't remove it. It's within my scope of practice to remove it, but if I don't feel comfortable because it's too hard or it's too deep or I can't get to it, I've got literal surgeons across the door from me that we can kind of one-stop shop it. So that's been really nice. I think anything is better than nothing, but I definitely don't see as long of a lifetime between like our devices and when a patient comes in saying, yeah, these are so many years old and Costco says they can't fix them anymore. The oldest hearing aid I think I've ever fixed was 23 years old. So it's not something where our model is based on trying to fit people as often as we physically can. Our model is to try and get the most lifespan out of devices as we can for people.
Great answer. This one was a submitted question via email. What would be the least expensive hearing aid available? This person has terminal cancer, unfortunately, and doesn't want to spend a fortune for something that they're not going to use for very long. I don't need perfection, just amplification in the speech range.
Yeah, so we have actually worked with a lot of patients like that just because we're a more medical clinic. So it depends on what they're looking for. I know that I've worked with some patients where they basically bought and or borrowed like a little pocket talker type of an idea. But the patient oftentimes, unfortunately, is not necessarily awake for a ton of time or things like that. So we more assess the needs of, okay, so maybe when they have visitors or when a nurse comes in the room or a doctor, they put on their headphones and then there's a little, microphone piece that they're listening to. And those cost a couple $100. Or maybe it is something where we look at leasing out a hearing aid or they borrow one of our loaners for a couple of months or things like that. Because we have loaners that we give patients when they go in for repairs or things there. So it more depends on the needs of the patient. So how severe the device is, how long they're needing to hear for in a day, things like that.
Thank you. And last question is, what do you think of the $200 hearing aids that are advertised?
Yeah, so we are actually seeing a push for more access for patients, and access is fantastic. Again, anything is better than nothing. It kind of got paused because of COVID, but there was supposed to be some FDA clearance and some FDA kind of regulations that are supposed to come into place for over-the-counter other types of devices that you could get without having to see other types of providers or professionals. They've existed for forever. The FDA was just trying to put kind of more regulations around it. So in my mind, it was like putting the Surgeon General's warning on the side of cigarettes. I think they were probably going to do more than that, but they've existed for forever. If a couple $100 device is what's working for your particular needs and you're sure that that's what's working, great. I've actually run probe microphone measurements. So you wear the device or you wear your hearing aids and I put a little microphone in to make sure that that's actually reaching your needs, so reaching your hearing loss. So we've done validation or kind of verification measures on patients and they've just paid for the appointment. If you are unsuccessful with a $200 device, please do not think, well, why on earth would I spend $2,000 to $4,000 if this is what $200 gets me? In some instances, you are getting what you pay for. I've had some patients with really mild losses say in quiet, these work just as well as anything else. It's usually in the background noise or some of those other things that things start to come apart.
Well, Samantha, I wish I wish we can continue this. This is so fascinating and it's so effective for people because hearing is being linked to so many issues in our lives, as you had pointed out early on. So I just want to thank you, Samantha Warren, for taking the time to spend with our group today. And I wish everyone a good afternoon and see you again soon. Remember, tomorrow we have another session, same time. Thank you.